welcome to another edition of Long Beach Treasures. I'm your host, Harvey Keller. Today we're going to be taking a visual tour of Signal Hill. And joining me as my tour guide is Steve Roden, who is a resident here in Signal Hill. So, Steve, thanks for joining me.
You're very welcome.
Tell me about the well here.
Well, this is Discovery Well. This was the first well that discovered oil in Signal Hill, and Signal Hill became one of the oil capitals of the nation. In fact, they called it Porcupine Hill because there were so many oil derricks back in the early 1900s that there was very little space that didn't have an oil derrick on it.
I understand that you could walk from one derrick's platform to another without even touching the ground. There were so many.
There were so many that you very rarely would find a spot where an oil derrick didn't overcross each other.
And this well came in, I believe, 9:30 p.m. on June 25th, 1921, and Signal Hill was changed forever.
It was changed forever.
You know, I guess when I first heard about Discovery 1, I thought there would be a wooden derrick up here, and it would be a historic event, you know. Now I see it's a working oil well. It's unbelievable that it's still pumping since 1921.
Yes, you're still in a very rich oil-filled area. And the Signal Hill Historical Society does have some of the old derricks left, but they were made of wood. A lot of them burned, a lot of them deteriorated. So there is a few pieces left that they keep for historical purposes that hopefully someday they'll be able to reconstruct.
Let's walk up the hill and look at some of the other things that are of note here.
Great.
Okay, Steve, this is a new park that was just dedicated, I believe, last week.
Yes, opened officially on Saturday.
And it's Discovery Well Park?
This is Discovery Well Park, because we have Discovery Well right here behind us.
Which I notice is now operating.
It is operating. It's on a timer, if I'm not mistaken, and comes on at certain times.
Now, why was this location picked for a park here in Signal Hill?
Well, they recently have had a lot of development that was here, and they wanted to have a certain amount of parks, and one of the reasons they picked this particular park, which has a phenomenal view, is because after the 1933 earthquake here in Long Beach, they used this area to dump a lot of the debris that was cleaned up throughout Long Beach, and so it was really kind of a landfill area portion over here, and so they decided to put the park here, and that's the area that it is.
It's a neat little park.
It's a wonderful park. You have a walking trail that starts down here and goes all the way around the hill, and little areas to stop and work out.
I want to go on up the hill and check out another monument that I see up there. So let's go on up.
Okay.
Okay, Steve, this looks like it's something new. What is this?
This is a Unity Monument, and it's been put here in memory of the September 11th victims. It's a unique piece of artwork, but it is quite spectacular, especially on a sunny day when the sun is reflecting off of the nickel.
And I see the artist is Patrick Vogel?
Yes. I believe he's a local artist, and it was commissioned right after the September 11th, 2001 tragedy in New York.
Art not being one of my better fields, does this have a symbolic representation of some kind, do you know, or is it just whatever you want to imagine it to be?
I imagine that's whatever you want it to be. I think probably because of the coloring and the metal and the twisted metalness of it, I'm sure it has some representation of that.
And I wonder if this is supposed to have any symbolic relationship to the Twin Towers.
Probably so. You'd have to ask the artist on it, of course, but I do notice the times I've been up here, whenever there's a group of people, it's very quiet and everybody kind of reflects and thinks.
We'll just speculate on our own and decide what it is.
That sounds great, Harvey.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Now, Steve, I see a lot of construction up here. I assume most of these are going to be homes, and I want you to tell us the significance of this particular home.
Okay, well, this particular home recently sold for over $1 million, and it was the first home up here on Signal Hill that sold for over the $1 million mark. And here in Signal Hill, for years, you had so much oil and derricks that it wasn't developed, and over the years, there's been less oil wells and more land that was developable. And now in the last 3 or 4 years, you've had a large amount of developed land that has a view of the ocean and Catalina Island.
And I bet this won't be the last $1 million home up here.
I'm sure it won't, not the way prices are going right now.
And if I'm not mistaken, across the street, which is undeveloped at this particular time, used to be Hilltop. Was it cafe or just a Hilltop?
I think it was Hilltop Restaurant, and it was a restaurant with dancing, and it was a place where a lot of people came, and for the last probably 40, 50 years, up until I believe it was the late 70s. It eventually got closed down. I believe it caught fire and eventually was raised over here. And
I remember in the 50s coming up here having dinner at the Hilltop.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of people that do.
All right, I want to go down and check out the Hilltop Park because I understand there's a spectacular view.
It's an incredible view, Harvey.
Let's check it out.
Okay.
Steve, it's noisy up here, but this is Hilltop Park. You know, it seems like you have quite a bit of open space, green space here in the city.
Well, we do, and one of the great things about Signal Hill is the fact that you have a population of around 10,000, so you have a very close community, and part of their concern about having everything built up here was to also preserve some of the view for the general public and for keeping some open space up here.
I'm anticipating a spectacular view up here because as I look to my left over here, I already see a spectacular view.
Oh yes, we're a little overcast today, but on a clear day you can see Catalina Island, Pacific Palisades, you can see the boats in the harbor.
As Barbara Streisand would say, on a clear day you can see forever.
Exactly.
This is open to the public, I'm assuming.
Yes, it is.
And there, in my readings, I read something about a Denny Mansion. Is it still here?
It's not still here, but the Denny Mansion was a very large home owned up here by the Denny's. And after the oil was discovered, they pretty much leased it or sold it to the oil companies, and the oil companies used it with their offices. It was eventually raised, I believe, in the 60s or 70s, and eventually this land here where we're standing right now is on top of basically a reservoir of water that was installed for the city of Signal Hill.
Wow, this is a spectacular view, isn't it?
It really is, Harvey.
I wished it were clearer, but
yeah. And on a clear day on this side you can see all the way down downtown LA, occasionally the Hollywood Hills.
Now, give me a little history of Signal Hill. I've read several things about how it got its name. Do you have a definitive answer? Because I have several.
Well, they're probably all correct, but I think the main one was the fact that the Indians would make fires up here and signal the other Indians in the different areas. It was their form of communication, and being one of the highest hills over here near the ocean, it was a great way for them to communicate with everybody. Now you've also, over the years, you had antennas and things up here with radios for TV stations and places like that. So they also use that with signals. So it's always kind of been a hill that has had a relevance of importance with signals.
Now the rim of the hill used to be surrounded with homes and mansions, and the lower levels would be gardens, farming?
You really, back in the early years, a lot of people from Pasadena built their vacation homes here. A lot of the wealthy also built their homes up here. This was out in the country. This wasn't considered close to a thriving city. There was probably just 3 or 4 large mansions right up here on top of the hill. And then down below, in the little bit flatter areas, you had developers who were building smaller 2,000, 3,000 square foot homes. And that was just getting developed with electricity and streets when all the oil came in.
And before that, it was farming?
A lot of farming. A lot of farming up here.
I read there were beans, cucumbers, cantaloupe, watermelon.
Right. Lemon trees, everything. I mean, you had a lot of farming that was going on up here. A lot of little farms and areas. You didn't necessarily have the supermarkets the way you do today. And so a lot of people would farm and do their selling from here or take their trucks into town.
I understand Earl Dougherty, the father of aviation in Long Beach, used to come up here with his friends with their gliders, and the ocean breezes would carry them aloft, and they could see forever.
Yes, I do, and you will still see a lot of people come up here with their kites and with their gliding electronic airplanes from here. You also had the Bixby's and the Denny's would race horses from up here down to the ocean. It was a great place to come up and to have a great weekend with a family. A lot of people traveled and traversed a long ways just to come here for special occasions and holidays.
Now, this must have been Rancho Los Alamitos land, because I know that they bought the Shell bought the land that they brought in Alamitos 1 on from the Alamitos Land Company, which was the John Bixby company.
Yes, it was. It was kind of the dividing line.
Well, this is really a neat area up here. I guess you're all really proud of it.
We're very proud of it. It was a very hidden kind of secret for a while, not necessarily that incredibly beautiful because of all the oil and refinery stuff that was around here. But over the years, as that has dwindled off, you have a very good mix of the two, and it's an incredible little hidden secret that was up here.
Do you know what you have in common with Rome, Italy?
No, I don't. What is that?
Both have a city within a city. Because yes. In the middle of Rome, you have Vatican City, completely surrounded by the city of Rome.
Yes.
And up here, you have Signal Hill, completely surrounded by Long Beach.
Yes, we do. And this was Long Beach in a lot of those areas. It wasn't until the 1922, after the oil came in, that the oil companies didn't want to be taxed by Long Beach, and they incorporated and became their own city, Signal Hill.
And also the oil did a lot for the development of downtown Long Beach also, because after the oil was discovered in 21, a building was going at the rate of $1 million a month.
Yeah.
And when you stop to think, the breakers, the Cooper Arms, the Insurance Exchange Building, they were built for anywhere from $200,000 to $800,000. So you had huge high-rises going up to the tune of 2 or more a month.
Very much so. Very much so.
And I understand you live in a historic home?
Yes, I do. It's a 1912 home that was built up here from a family from Pasadena, the All Swedes, who also had an emporium here in Long Beach.
Can we go down and take a look at it?
Yes, we can. Let's go.
Let's do it. Okay, Steve, describe the architectural style of your house for me.
Well, this is an arts and crafts bungalow built in the 1912. And arts and crafts back in the early 1900s was a very big thing going on in America. And part of the thing with that was to feel a part of nature, just to kind of blend in. You have different types of arts and crafts. One next door would be considered an airplane bungalow because a lot of them had the span of the roof went out like wings on an airplane. This one was just more of a bungalow that had a great porch. You were able to have a lot of the greenery and a lot of the plants and things growing around it. You also had massive gardens around because a lot of people like to garden and have it just kind of fit into nature.
Now, you live in a historic district, right?
Yes.
And the historic district here on Signal Hill runs from where to where?
We pretty much run about halfway in this lot to Walnut, and then from just south of Burnett to 25th, which is now called Crescent Drive.
Okay, now, there are an awful lot of, well, there's a lot of vacant land up here in the historic district, and I see relatively few homes. And now, does this mean that you either have to bring one in and refurbish it, or?
No, not at all. Actually, when the oil came in, you had more homes up here. We probably had about 8 or 9. There was 2 homes across the street that were here. But back then, when the oil came in on the derricks, it wasn't controlled the way it is today with technology. The oil would come blasting up through the ground with rocks and boulders and dirt and mud and everything, all the oil, and so that destroyed a lot of the homes. Rocks and boulders came through roofs and broke eaves and
didn't they move
things.
Several of them down to
They did.
California
a lot of
Heights?
People had made a lot of money, so they had the option of just selling the home and moving somewhere, but some people were very attached to their homes and moved them. And one in particular was right across the street from us, which is vacant land now, and it is now located down on Redondo and First.
I see this must be an industrial complex
right.
over here?
Over here is some commercial, and they sell air conditioning units.
Now,
but now, after we were changed to a historical district, which we worked to save the 4 or 5 homes that were left up here, that'll be there as long as they would like for it to be there. But once that business is gone, it will become a residential area, and all this will be developed in residential.
So the two choices you have is to relocate an old historic home up here and refurbish it, or build a new one
in some type of period or context of style that would stay with the historical time of the era.
Well, this is all right. Let's go in and see your house.
Okay, great.
Watch the dog.
That's also.
I bet this is really nice and cool in the summertime with all the vines up there.
Yeah, it is very cool. Signal Hill is very cool in the summertime because being up on the hill, we get the ocean breeze and it hits the hill very, very hard. It's almost like 5 or 6 degrees cooler up here all the time.
Now, when did you say your home was built?
This home was built in 1912 by the Allswedes.
I assume the knocker and the door are original?
Yes, everything in the house is original. We were actually the first family to purchase it outside of the Allswede family. It had stayed in their family for the whole period, until we came along.
This is a massive front room.
It's a very long front room. Of course, back in the early 1900s, everybody did a lot of entertaining, and it came off of the dining room, and it was a very long room. In fact, the beams are still encased, which has also helped to keep the house in such remarkable condition.
Beautiful wood.
It's a tiger oak.
I love the coffered ceilings. How many square feet do you have here?
It's a little over 2,000.
Now, the fireplace looks a little more modern than it might have been when originally built.
I would imagine, we don't have any proof of it, but we were told by the family that it came down in the 1933 earthquake and that they retiled it. Of course, the 1933 earthquake was post, I guess you would say, arts and crafts, and so a lot of people went and did some of the stone and flagstone, which was also cheaper considering the Depression and everything. I would imagine originally it was done in a tile of some sort.
Batchelder tile, probably.
Probably so.
You have a spectacular view over here outside of this, the window over here.
Yes, it really is. And back in the early 1900s, a lot of people didn't, I think, relish the view as much as we did. You didn't have as many tall buildings and things like that. When we moved in, there was an original building, an original room right here, and that was more of like a little area that was like an outdoor area, but it blocked a lot of the view, and over the years a lot of it had rotted and been replaced with aluminum siding and stuff, so we took it out.
This is a neat little nook.
Yeah, it has lots of little hidden things like that. It even has little places where they would hide and put things, which a lot of the homes back then did.
You're so fortunate no one came in and painted the woodwork white.
Well, you know, I think probably having the fact that it was owned by the same family,
right,
and one of the previous Allswede families members that lived in here for 50, 60 years did not have any kids, and so it was just her and her husband and then just her, and so I think that kept it original for that sake.
And I see this is the dining room. And
this is the dining room. And after the oil came in, they didn't come here quite as much, and I was told by the family members that they had a pool table in here during World War II, so when all of their sons' friends and people were on leave, they would stay up here and play pool. And then in the light up here, you'll see the chips in it where the pool sticks would hit it. And then in the plate railings, you'll see where the cigar burns are. And the cigar burns, we just kind of left. We found the plate railings in the basement buried. They had been removed by the time we had moved in.
Do you use your patio here very much?
Yeah, we really do. We've had some fundraisers, and for entertaining, you open it up, and it's a great place to eat. It's very cool, and a phenomenal view.
And when you need to change the oil in your car, you just run out there and get some oil from the well?
Well, I wish it was that simple, but almost.
What else do you want to show us?
Well, we'll come over here to the back. Another interesting portion of the house is the fact back in the early 1900s they did lots of entertaining, but very rarely did they use the kitchen. Your servants or your help would use the kitchen. And so you had quarters for your servants that would live out back, and they would just come in and cook or whatever. So we have a little servants' quarters that's out in the back for all your help.
And that's probably a rental now?
It's a rental. I have a friend that lives here, and he also helps take care of some of the grounds, and he also has a company sports kilt here in Signal Hill.
Well, let's go look at a couple more homes located here in the historic district that have been renovated.
That sounds great.
Now, Steve, this is another home in the historic district. I think this had some significance, you said?
Yeah, one of the owners still lives there. Her name is Ethel. A delightful lady who has had a lot of experience in the history of Signal Hill. Her husband used to be the mayor of Signal Hill, I believe in the 1940s. She's still very active in the community, and it's one of the 5 remaining homes here in the historical district.
So she has longevity up here on the hill.
She has longevity.
All right, there are a couple more homes I want to go see. I know that they've been moved up here or moved around, and let's go check those out.
Okay, great.
Okay, Steve, I believe this house used to be located down at First and Ocean Boulevard.
It was. It was sitting on the beach, and they were getting ready to demolition it and build condos. They've since built the condos, but John Ellis and Mike Knoll renovated it. They cut it in 4 parts. They had it moved up here, reassembled it, remodeled it on the interior, and put it in our historical district. And we've saved another home from being destroyed.
And I believe this was the original carriage house.
This is the original carriage house, and it's been they've put garages underneath it. And it's now part of the historical district. And this is Roy and Nike.
And I notice they're protecting the property.
They're very protective.
Now, you know, this house looks like it's a brand new house. It does not look like it's been restored.
Right. Well, what he did, because of the fact that they had to basically cut it in 4 parts and bring it up here, there's a lot of things that you couldn't save. So what they did do is kept it completely modern inside. It's just like having a brand new home, but they kept an essence of the flavor of it.
And I think the only thing on the interior that's still original is the wainscoting in the dining room.
Wainscoting and some of the cabinetry in the dining room. The floor plan is still the same to some degree. Some parts of it were changed in the fireplace.
It's a beautiful home.
It's a lovely home.
You know, it's sort of ironic. This was moved from Long Beach up to Signal Hill, and during the 20s we were moving them from Signal Hill down to Long Beach.
I know, it really is ironic that we've moved so many houses around, but a lot of people became very attached to their homes, as a lot of people become attached to the homes today, and they've wanted to save them.
So if someone wanted to build in the historic district here in Signal Hill, they could build a home like this and it would be perfectly acceptable.
Correct. In fact, you'll find next door to this home is an old building, which is a termite company, and they're in the process of getting ready to raise that and to build a home there.
Oh, okay. I think there's one other home I want to go see. I think it's called the Greenhouse.
Yes, it was built by Horace Green, and we can go take a look at it.
All right. Okay, now this is the other house up here that was always on Signal Hill, but it used to be on the vacant lot over there.
On the other side. It was built by Horace Green. We call it the Greenhouse, not to be mistaken with a Green and Green.
Now, Horace Green used to have a hardware store in downtown Long Beach, right?
Long Beach, and he built this home over here, and he also had a matching one for his daughter next door. And when the oil came in, one of them was destroyed, and then his was damaged, and what he did was he rented it out as a flop house for a lot of the oil workers, and then it later also became a fraternity house. And when we ran across it up here, the city was getting ready to tear it down for the development that was over here.
This is hard to believe that this is an old house. It looks so spectacularly new.
Well, it was in a very large, in great despair. I mean, there wasn't too much left of it that was going to be salvageable. And what John has done is, again, like the other one that we looked at over here off of First and Ocean, is he moved it across the street to the property that he had, and he refurbished it. Again, he completely modernized it. It's like having a brand new home, but he kept a flavor of the history that it was originally built with.
Looking over the fence, I see what looks like maybe a water tower, is it?
That's actually another historical home that's back there. That's owned by Will Gilliam. He's probably in his late 70s, and he's been here in Signal Hill with his mother originally moved here, and he's had that home for quite a while too. I believe a captain originally built that, and that's kind of a turret that's back there.
Ah. Well, this is a neat area. It's going to grow and grow and grow.
I think that it will grow and grow, and we've been able to keep a certain amount of history with it and save what remaining historical homes are here in Signal Hill.
All right, there's a couple more stops I want to make, so
Okay,
let's go.
You got it.
All right, Steve, I had to, no stop on Signal Hill would be complete without a stop at world-famous Curly's Cafe. 1932?
1932, and Curly's is where a lot of the oil workers would come after work and hang out, and it's now owned by David Frick, but Curly owned it, I think, up until the 60s or 70s, I'm not real sure, and it has a lot of oil history to it.
And I think one of the most unusual things that I find about Curly's is how many restaurants do you have an oil well pumping right outside the front door?
Not very many, but not too many homes do you find oil wells outside their door, and a lot of the homes here have them also.
And I guess they do a booming business up here.
They really do. They're known for some of their worldwide hamburgers and great food, and it's just got that old world feel to it.
All right, one last stop at City Hall, and I think that'll do it.
Okay, great.
Let's go.
Okay.
All right, Steve, this is City Hall. And I see that we're going from Craftsman Bungalow to Art Deco.
Yeah, well, this was built, I believe, sometime in the 1920s, or 30s, actually, I think 33. And Art Deco was a very stylish style of the time, and has some great remnants of the original architecture and work that's done on it.
So Signal Hill, like most cities, has an eclectic mix of architectural styles.
Especially in Southern California, it does.
And I understand there are some fantastic photos in here that I'd like to go in and see.
Wonderful photos.
Of early Signal Hill?
Of early Signal Hill, especially during the oil era.
Okay. Steve, I suppose this mural here probably depicts pretty closely what Signal Hill must have looked like after 1921.
It really does. You're starting to see all the old derricks that are going up, and then once you get into the photos over here, you'll see even more of the old derricks that would go up. It was referred to as Porcupine Hill because there were so many old derricks, and it looked like the back of a porcupine.
I also noticed standing down here, the ceiling here in the City Hall, really Art Deco, and I really like the chandelier up there. This is really quite an attractive City Hall.
It's just phenomenal.
And these are the pictures here on the wall?
These are a lot of the pictures throughout City Hall that we have of different oil gushers and different oil derricks and wells that were coming up during the heyday of Signal Hill.
Look at the houses butted right up next to an oil derrick.
Right, and of course most of the homes were there before the oil derricks, and then the oil derricks came secondarily.
Wow. There were some fairly small homes, then you have some fairly large homes.
Yeah, well, just like a lot of cities in Signal Hill, you had your small bungalows, and then you had your larger homes that were there too. You just had a mix of it all.
And here we are, March 1923.
And you notice all the numbers on the oil derricks that are up here. So each oil derrick was numbered so that you knew the owner and the name of the oil derrick.
Now here we have a whole lot of homes that haven't been moved, destroyed, or changed yet.
Yeah, a very large amount of them. It took really a lot over the years, especially when a lot of them were rented out.
Were people living in tents?
Oh, definitely. The first city hall in the city area, when they incorporated it into a city, was pretty much just a little shanty town of tents until the city hall that we currently have now was built.
Steve, I'm impressed with your city of Signal Hill, and I want to thank you for being my tour guide today. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon, and I thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Harvey.
And be sure and join us again next month as we take another walk through history and uncover more Long Beach treasures.